Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Intercooler podcast with me, Dan Prosser, Andrew Frankel sitting opposite me. This is episode 216. Magazine style, we've got a lot that we want to talk about.
Yeah.
I'm just going to remind you all that we have a live podcast recording coming up very soon with Ian Callum, superstar car designer Ian Callum, as the special guest.
Yeah.
And there are still some tickets available. So if you've been umming and ahhing about that one and you want to come along on Wednesday, the 10th of July, the evening of, in Warwick, and listen to us talk nonsense and Ian hopefully be insightful and interesting, you please come along. Tickets are still available.
Yeah.
There will be a link to the Eventbrite listing in the description of this episode. Click the link and come and join us for what I think will be a really fun evening.
Yeah, I mean, Ian is, best known British car designer working today. And he's a dude. He's a really good guy. He's a great communicator too. He has fantastic stories. I hope he's a bit indiscreet. I suspect he probably will be. Because he'll be amongst friends. And, it's not just his life at JLR, but his life before that at Aston Martin, working for Tom Walkinshaw. He is just a great guy. It's going to be a fantastic evening, and it would be great. And we will be there. You can talk to Ian, you can talk to us, and it would be lovely to see you. It's
at Callum, which is Ian Callum's design and engineering consultancy. It's in Warwick, the outskirts of Warwick, and there'll be a tour of the facility for everyone who comes along. So it's an interesting place to poke around. They work on some super cool cars there, and we're really pleased to be working on this evening with Autoglym, the car care specialist. They've made it possible, so a huge thank you to Autoglym for working with us on this event. And come along.
Can I just say on the Autoglym front?
Go on.
We're not just saying this because they're our partners, because they are. But I have always, and I really have always used their stuff.
Yeah, true, actually.
And I have a few old sheds, and and I want them to be looked after, and I want to use proper stuff on them, and that's what I use.
Yeah, actually, the only car care stuff I have at home is Autoglym.
There you go.
There you go. So
yeah,
good. Okay, so I don't think you've yet watched the Spanish Grand Prix because you were away.
I was away,
but presumably you've sort of seen the result.
I know what's happened, and I kind of on the Sky Sports app, I kind of kept up. It sounds like it was quite a good race.
It was quite good. I think it could have been a bit more of a thriller.
Yeah.
Essentially, Lando Norris, starting from pole, had a fairly poor start, which allowed Max to get in front, and George Russell came swooping round and got in front of everyone.
Yeah.
And
so how did George end up fourth?
It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is a curious one that they put the hard tyre on at his second pit stop, which just killed his race. I remember watching one of the practice sessions. The commentator, I can't remember who it was, said that everyone was expecting the hard tyre to be a good race tyre. So there was this expectation.
So they split the strategies and they put Lewis on a soft?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first race in a long time, I think, where Lewis has both out-qualified and finished in a higher position.
Yeah, first for a little while.
Yeah, and I know that we're talking about, quali, it was thousandths of a second, in the race it was one place, but nevertheless, Lewis having gone, whatever it was 8-1 down on qualifying. I think he's pretty pleased to be 8-2 rather than 9-1 now.
I'm sure.
And Lando, was it Lando won that?
As I said,
another race that Lando could have won.
I know. So he got a poor start, which meant that he was behind both George and Max. And Max got through on the second lap, I think, past George. Lando got stuck, and so he lost several seconds. And Karun, our friend Karun, was in comms and did a fabulous job, as he always does.
Yeah.
And he said that Lando lost about 4 seconds stuck behind George, and of course he lost the race by 2 seconds. So there's every chance that he would have, in the dying stages, come up behind Max and maybe got through.
Yeah, but Max got past George.
And Lando didn't. I don't know why he didn't. I don't know what was going on.
What I find quite interesting about that is, I bow to no one in my admiration for Lando. I think he is amazing. But if you've been Max for the last couple of years and you've just been used to just cruising around while everybody else has a little motor race by themselves, what interests me is that he's still very fighty, isn't he? He's still proper. And he has an ability to get past people, which someone who's just been sort of sitting out front, not having to overtake anybody, wouldn't necessarily. You think that that might sort of get dull. That sense might get dull, but it clearly hasn't, has it? He's still very punchy.
He is. The promising thing about the last couple of races is that, well, Max hasn't qualified on pole, so that Red Bull doesn't look like it's the out-and-out fastest car anymore. Gosh. But he's having to fight for these wins now.
Yeah.
The last one, Canada, he really had to work for it.
Yeah.
This one, it was by no means, a walk in the park for him.
He's still going to be world champion, isn't he?
He's still going to, there's no question.
Yeah.
Because, well, he doesn't have a teammate who's taking points off him, and most of the rest do. But he's
so far ahead.
He's so far ahead already, won so many races.
Yeah.
He is going to win the World Championship. But we still have a season on our hands in terms of the races.
I think we've got some exciting races coming up.
They're going to be really good to watch.
Yeah.
Because, so even earlier in this season, Max was winning by 15, 20 seconds quite comfortably.
Yeah, it's not happening anymore.
This one was 2 seconds.
Yeah.
So the pack appeared to be on him.
So do we think that, and we're not going to dwell on this, are we? We're not going to be, this isn't going to be a Formula One podcast by any stretch. We'll be out of here in a couple of minutes. But it's just, what is it? Is it that McLaren in particular have caught up? Or is it that because of everything that's going on, with Newey leaving and Newey actually effectively on gardening leave now, all the internal politicking that's been going on with Christian Horner, and Helmut Marko and Max's dad and everything else, as Red Bull's eye off the ball. It's hard to see. You'd think that their processes would be so set and so fixed, but it does seem to me that Red Bull's season stopped being a runaway season at almost exactly the time that all this lot blew up.
It's interesting.
Yeah,
it is interesting.
Yeah.
But we're also getting towards the end of a rule set, and you always expect convergence towards the end of a regulation era.
Yeah.
We've got one more year of this after this one, haven't we?
Yeah.
So I don't know what's going on, but thank goodness it's not like a repeat of last year. Where, I do not mind if Max keeps winning this season, as long as he has to work for them.
Yeah.
And we're entertained.
And also, and next season, I mean, we come on this podcast, and this is why you should never ever listen to anything that we say. And we have said, well, obviously, it's Max's from now until because no one will ever get near him because their car is so far ahead. But then stuff happens, doesn't it? And stuff you don't expect, and they get a bit better, and maybe Red Bull do take their eye off the little ball. And I think because actually in the world of Formula One, it's the differences between an absolutely runaway car and something which is nowhere is probably in real terms really pretty small. And you have to small changes, and if you can make them and then they can come back a bit, and you end up with races worth watching.
The top 7 or 8 cars, they're so closely matched now. I mean, there was a gap between the front row and the rest in qualifying in Spain, but by and large, the front gaggle are so close.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about different.
It's hundreds.
It's hundreds. Sometimes it's thousands.
If you're half a tenth off, you can be 3 or 4 places further back. It's extraordinary.
That's great.
That's what makes it such a spectacle. The qualifying session was hugely exciting to watch.
Yeah.
So
apparently Lando just pulled out.
Yeah, he did.
His lap of laps.
It looked amazing.
Yeah.
So, blimey, huge credit to him.
And so quickly, just last thing, because I don't know the answer to this question. Piastri, why wasn't he in the mix?
Well, he stuffed up qualifying. He put in 1 or 2 very, very fast sectors on his quick lap in quali in Q3.
Yeah.
But then ran wide into the gravel, and so he was down in 10th.
And couldn't get out, so he didn't even get a second run?
No.
Okay.
Well, I think maybe it was his second run, but yeah, it must have been. But he was massively hindered by that, but his pace did look good up until that point.
Yeah.
So don't discount him.
And Ferraris continue to drift slowly back down the grid.
Yeah, it's curious, that one.
Yeah.
They've won 2 races this year, mostly on merit.
Yeah.
But they just weren't...
Monaco was purely on merit, wasn't it?
Yeah, but they just weren't in contention over the weekend. But Charles and Carlos appear to be, rubbing each other up the wrong way at the moment.
Is the bromance coming to an end?
I think it is.
Okay.
I think it is.
Right.
It's going to be quite compelling to watch that one. But on Lando and on George, huge respect for both of them. They're phenomenal talents. They do now have to prove that they can start winning at this highest level when the opportunity is there. Yeah,
but it's a bit difficult when you've got Max and a Red Bull, isn't it?
It is. It's tricky.
Yeah,
it's tricky. But
Lando
takes responsibility for it because it was his poor start that cost him the win.
Yeah, and neither of them can sort of, they're not new boys anymore. They've been around. They are fully mature.
They're both in their six years.
In their 6 years, which probably means, I can't do the maths. It does mean they've done over 100 Grand Prix each.
Yeah.
Well, so no excuses.
No, now's the time for both of them to take that one last step. And I really hope they both do it this season.
So do I.
Enough F1.
Yeah.
Different form of motorsport, though.
Oh, okay.
You were at Le Mans.
Yes.
I wasn't there. I mean, we teed it up a couple of weeks beforehand with a podcast, didn't we? And we said this was the best entry there has ever been in the top category.
Yeah. And it resulted in one of the best races that I have ever seen there. And it wasn't just the races, it was the whole week because, I mean, qualifying, you could never have predicted that. That P2 and P3 on the grid in the hyperpole were going to be Cadillacs.
Yeah.
And that, the only reason there was a Porsche on pole was because Kevin Estre just did one of those brain out laps and just did it, just
he's
threw
so
everything.
quick.
Yeah, and he's so unbelievably quick. And the Ferraris didn't look that pacey, and it was all just shaping up to be the most. I mean, the Alpines briefly looked quick, and the Peugeots never looked particularly quick, but it was just the BMWs. I mean, in qualify, the fastest car in qualifying was a BMW. And if they just left it at qualifying and hadn't gone on to have this hyperpole thing, there would have been a BMW on pole at Le Mans. And so we were all thinking this is going to get really, really exciting. And it was really exciting, but just not for the reasons that we thought it would, because the race started. And really remarkably quickly, it was Toyota, Porsche, Ferrari. All the people who are like fresh to that race, or who hadn't really figured so far in the season, they just sort of faded away. Poor BMW, they just had.
You were with BMW, weren't you? So you were following their.
Yeah, I was following, which is why I know a bit more about what they were up to than anybody else. So I thought their strategy was absolutely perfect. They looked at the weather forecast. They thought they had a pretty reliable car, and I don't think there are any mechanical failings on the cars at all.
And clearly a quick car.
Clearly from qualifying, a quick car. So they said to the drivers, okay, so the weather's going to be all over the place. We know that this race will be won by the team that has the most luck, which we can't control, and the team which makes the fewest mistakes, which we can control. So what you're going to do, guys, i.e. their drivers, is you are going to just manage for 20 hours. You're going to go round, you're going to keep your nose clean, you're not going to take any stupid risks, you're not going to bin it, and then with 4 hours to go, if we're still on the lead lap, if we're still in the reckoning, then maybe we'll have a proper go. That was the
good plan, good strategy.
With the weather that they had, and in a race that was going to be so unpredictable, because Le Mans always is, and because there was an entry for Le Mans like there'd never been before, I thought that was a really sensible approach. And what happens? Both cars get binned within the first 3 hours.
Just drivers overextending themselves.
Overextending themselves. Both cars. So with less than an eighth, and both cars were recoverable and they got back to the pits, but with less than an eighth of the race completed, both cars were out of contention.
Gosh,
and then
hopeless, isn't it?
The art car, the beautiful art car, then got binned again by the same driver, to an extent that basically, although they repaired it, it took so many hours, all they could do was get it out, limp it round the last lap, and for it to be unclassified. And the other one just got taken out by Kubica in the Ferrari. It's just completely taken out. In one of those accidents that you see it and you think to yourself, it wouldn't have been that long ago before that could have had some really, really unfortunate consequences.
Yeah.
Big accident. 180 mile an hour off. So that was BMW's race. And then, yes, it just came down to a straight fight between Ferrari, Toyota, and Porsche. And, they all led various bits of it. It seemed to me that Ferrari tend to get the best of the breaks, or when people were being penalised. I mean, for instance, I think Kubica, although he wasn't actually, he was in a work supported Ferrari. It wasn't technically a works Ferrari, but it essentially was. For completely taking BMW out of the race, he got 30 seconds, which is 30 seconds on a short track is but over 24 hours, that's a penalty you can recover from. Being stuck in the wall 180 miles an hour is not a penalty you can recover from. So I think they got off lightly there. But at the same time, I think as in last year, I think they ran the best race. They were the team that made the fewest mistakes. They were the team that probably had the most luck, and they did win the race as a result. But, I take nothing away from them for that. I mean, basically, the Porsche faded in the last couple of hours, and it became a fight between Ferrari and Toyota. And Ferrari just stepped up and did what needed to be done, and it was an incredibly close finish, because right at the end, the lead Ferrari, it had a pit stop, I think, 52 minutes before the end of the race. And it was just one of those things. Do we just go slow and not stop again, or do we drive like the wind? And they decided that they weren't going to stop again. And they'd had a lead of like sort of 30, 40 seconds. You could just see it going down, 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 down. And you just think, oh, and the Toyota was chasing. But in fact, they timed it to perfection. And they crossed the line with half a thimble full of fuel in the car. But it doesn't matter. And they won the race. And it was another couple of observations. I didn't go last year because I was on holiday. And the atmosphere there has changed completely. And for me, entirely for the better. I mean, last year, obviously, was the centenary race. It was apparently completely rammed. This year, it was completely rammed. But that really unfortunate constituency of very, very drunk, usually quite rude, slightly shameful Brits on tour element just wasn't there. Or if it was, I didn't see it and I didn't hear anything of it. Somebody made the rather cynical remark that it's because they're all in Germany, because England were playing in the Euros. But I don't know. I don't think people are just down to that. It just seemed to me it felt much more like a Le Mans Classic crowd, where you just get people there who just love racing.
Well, that's it. Maybe when the racing's good, it brings a different crowd.
Yeah, I think that's probably it. And I was out at Indianapolis at like 1:30 in the morning, with all the people there, and everybody's just up against the fence, and they've got Radio Le Mans playing in their ears, and they're taking photographs, and there's a barbecue going on, and they're having a few beers. And to me, that is what that event should be, always should be. And I can't wait to go back next year.
Ferrari, since coming back to top tier endurance racing, has won 2 World Endurance Championships rounds.
Yeah.
Both Le Mans. Hasn't won any other races.
No, okay, so they should have. Where should they have won? I think they should have won Imola this year. But surprise, surprise, they cocked up their strategy. Is this a Dan conspiracy theory?
It's a question we can ask.
Okay, so, but it's not a question I can answer. And what I can answer, what I can tell. If you ask me why can't you answer it, I can answer why. I can tell you why I can't answer the question.
Yeah, no one was talking about balance of performance, were they?
Because
they're not allowed.
They're not allowed to. Obviously, because we know what happened last year with Toyota and with Ferrari, and I have said on this podcast and written that I felt, although Ferrari ran a fantastic race, and I wouldn't want to take anything away from them, I felt very sorry for Toyota because they had a balance of performance disadvantage imposed on them in a way that the people responsible for deciding these things, which is the FIA and the ACO, said they would not do. This year, I went up to somebody from Toyota, I won't say who, but somebody who, believe me, would know, and said, "Are you happy with the balance of performance?" And he almost just started whistling and looking at the sky. Nothing to see here. And I went, anyway, well, I can't talk to you about that. I'm sorry. These are bad. Absolutely not allowed. And apparently it's in the regulations. They are not allowed to talk about the BOP. What was interesting was that the ACO did put out releases before the race explaining the balance of performance. So they clearly feel that they need to justify it, they need to defend it, to stand it up. But I really don't know if one team feels aggrieved because of what happened to them, or another feels that they got off lightly, or whatever. I didn't get any sense of that. And from what I could see, I mean, it was quite strange, I guess, that the Cadillacs were so fast in Hyperpole and then really faded quite quickly. I mean, they didn't disappear out of contention, but they were never quite right up there. I don't know. My guess is that it was a much straighter, fairer fight this year than last. But it is a guess.
So why would the ACO stop the teams from talking about balanced performance? I guess you could see it one of two ways. One is that they don't want discussions around BOP overshadowing the sport. They want it to be a true sporting spectacle, and for the attention to be on the cars, on the drivers, on the teams, not the regulators. Or they want to be able to fiddle it willy-nilly and essentially choose who wins. That is the ultimate cynical view, which I don't necessarily subscribe to.
No.
But some people will see it that way.
I think it comes down to what happened last year. I think that, because last year Toyota won every single round.
Yeah.
Apart from Le Mans.
Yeah.
Which was the centenary race, which was won by Ferrari
on its return
on the 50th anniversary of its return as a works manufacturer. Toyota won every race before it. Toyota won every race after it. And I think there's absolutely a case to make which says, yes, clearly that looks sniffy, but in fact, it is as much a reflection of the fact of just how different a circuit Le Mans is to anywhere else they go.
Yeah.
And the Ferrari happened to be better suited to that circuit. And unquestionably, Ferrari ran a really good race at Le Mans in 2023. Or you can take the purely cynical approach, which you do. What I think is undeniable is that there was an awful lot of chat and an awful lot of people going, that doesn't quite feel right to me. And I suspect it's just I feel inclined to be slightly, what are the FIA, and it's not just the ACO, it's the FIA and the ACO, they determine these things between them. What do they want? Well, they want to stage a great motor race. I think more than anything else, they want, and by configuring the rules that they have, and by getting more works manufacturers to enter Le Mans this year than any previous year of its history, and for a race to be that close for that long, I think that they have absolutely achieved those objectives.
Yeah.
And I think for 99.9% of race goers, that's enough. I think that's job done. None of the manufacturers is walking off in a huff and saying, we're not coming back this year. They're all coming back next year. So they must be at least happy enough with the way that things are. But I think the problem is the moment you start banning anyone from saying anything, people, it is inevitable, but people will think that strings are being pulled and this is Big Brother and everything else. And people may start coming to conclusions about things which actually, aren't true, but just sort of, thinking the worst because, if manufacturers are being banned from talking, then, that just doesn't sound very good, does it? It doesn't sound open and honest.
No, it doesn't. It feels like
you suspect that something less open and honest is going on.
It feels like there's a lot of managing of narratives going on.
Yeah.
Which can be a bit smelly, can't it? But perhaps that's not it at all.
It was a cracking motor race.
Yeah.
And whatever they may or may not have done, hats off certainly to the ACO for staging a Le Mans I was delighted to have been able to watch.
What was the mood within BMW then? Are they fully committed to Le Mans? Is it really important to them? Are they determined to go and win this thing?
I spoke to them about this. Unfortunately, I didn't catch them at a great time because they weren't having a terrific weekend. But they're absolutely committed to next year. They say, obviously they would, that the objective is to win the race outright. I think that I wouldn't necessarily say that they regret, because obviously BMW won it in 1999, and it's one of the great forgotten wins because they never came back. It was a one-off, and there was quite a lot of other stuff going on in that race. And I think that I would say that they wouldn't say they necessarily regret. I don't think they think they made a mistake because I think they went off to go and do Formula One, and they had other fish to fry. But I think they do regard that as unfinished business. The car looks amazing, best looking car in the race. It looks absolutely incredible. I don't imagine they're going to be coming back with exactly the same driver lineup next year.
Yeah.
But I think the very fact that in qualifying they showed how quick the car was, I suspect that there will be some drivers with other teams who are out of contract who will be very interested in it. And also, if you look at the setup they had there, I mean, you read a lot into just how visible the presence is, how much advertising they have up there, how many people they bring along, what sort of and BMW absolutely chucked everything at this. And they must have been utterly gutted. In fact, I know they were utterly gutted because they were so pissed off, frankly, at what had happened, that they were talking quite freely and openly to journalists about it, which I also appreciated. So my guess is, I mean, I think they're contractually only signed up for next year. I suspect they will see how it goes. I suspect also that the intention is to hang around a bit. I really hope so, because it was great to have them there. The cars look amazing, and the moment you get that sort of, I mean, we've seen it so many times with that race that it's so cyclical. A few manufacturers turn up, and then a few other manufacturers, oh, maybe we should do it. And then suddenly, there's a big pile on. You get these wonderful, wonderful, sadly, too often, too brief periods where it just becomes an absolute classic. And then, one or two go off to do something else, and then somebody else thinks, oh, well, if they're not there, we probably and then the whole cycle starts again. So I hope that BMW, as well as everybody else, stays around, because I think success breeds success, and the more manufacturers that are in it, the more manufacturers will want to be in it. And next year, let's not forget, Aston Martin will be back.
Yeah,
2 cars, 2 Valkyries, and that to me, all by itself, is going to be another reason to want to go.
You're right. The BMW did look fantastic.
Yeah,
and I just want the manufacturers who put the resources and the effort into motorsport to be rewarded when they deserve it. And I just hope that, maybe not necessarily at Le Mans, but through the WEC season, the likes of Alpine, the likes of BMW, have some success, have some joy to.
I don't think. Well, who can say? You might get a freak race where weather or something else does, but over a race distance, they just didn't look that quick compared to the established teams. I mean, the Alpines had an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, they did.
Both engines blew up.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be happening these days. You shouldn't be getting bits of metal emerging through engine blocks.
No.
So they need to go and look at that. The Peugeot just, you'd think if ever, the ACO or the FIA would think, well, we'll just give someone a bit of a leg up here. It would be Peugeot, given their history in the race, and given obviously that it's home race for them. They were just nowhere.
It's bizarre, isn't it? It's interesting. Let's leave Le Mans there.
Okay.
And we've spoken a lot about BMW, and we're going to keep talking about BMW, specifically BMW M5s.
Yes, one of my favourite subjects.
Oh, it's good, isn't it? So 2024 is the 40th anniversary of the M5.
Yep.
And we're just a few days away from seeing the 7th generation M5, the all-new one. G90?
Yes,
G90.
G90.
We're going to see it at the Goodwood Festival of Speed.
Yes. I've got a G90. In fact, I've got 5 G90s.
Is that a watch?
No. It's a
bit of garden equipment or something?
Goodyear tyre on my... The G90 was a tyre made to get the British Army through a Bosnian winter.
Blimey.
And they're on my Land Rover.
Gosh, so nothing's stopping you?
No. I don't think they're particularly good tyres, actually, but they were cheap. Anyway, sorry, move on.
To a different G90.
Yes.
So there is a brand new M5 coming. And as far as we know, it's got essentially the same powertrain as the XM, which isn't a Citroen. It's that big SUV, 750 horsepower BMW M thing.
Yeah.
So the new M5 is going to have massive power.
Yeah.
It's probably going to weigh a fair amount more than the outgoing one.
I hope it doesn't.
But interesting. Looking forward to seeing this new M5. But how do we mark this occasion? 40 years of the M5.
I wonder.
A new one coming.
Yes. Would it be an idea to have a look at the ones that have already been?
Well, we've pushed the boat out, haven't we?
Yeah.
We've gone big with this one, and M5 week on the Intercooler is coming up.
Yeah.
It'll be the week that we see the new M5. And it will also be that week that we declare one M5 the greatest of all time.
Yes.
Because we've gathered an example of all 6 generations together.
6 of them, yeah.
And we've driven them back to back over a full day in Wales.
Yeah.
and we are going to declare one of them the greatest. There's a couple of videos coming as well.
Yeah.
But I want to talk a little bit about the cars that we had there.
So can we just do the E numbers? So the first was
28.
28. Then moving swiftly on to the
E34,
34,
E39.
Hang on. So the 28 and the 34 were the straight six.
Yep.
Cars, naturally aspirated, straight six. And then the first to sort of vary the theme was the 39
with a V8,
with a 5-litre V8. Then we go to the real outlier.
Well, those are I'm calling them the classic M5s, and then we move into the modern M5s,
because they haven't got enough pedals in their footwells.
That's right.
Yeah,
and they are more modern cars. The E60 with that howling V10.
Yeah,
paddle shift gearbox, very very sophisticated for the day chassis electronics. Very different sort of car to the one that came before it. And then we have the F10, which is the first of the turbo ones.
Yeah, and
then the F90. Which is the previous one, the outgoing one.
Yeah, the one I kind of in my head think of as the current car, although it quite clearly isn't. It hasn't
not
been
quite
for a while. But obviously, the one which also had the CS.
Well, this is it. So in just about, I think in every instance, we had, where there was a choice, we had the best, an example of the best or the ultimate version, right?
Yes.
So the E34 was a 3.8.
Okay, so but it wasn't quite. Okay, so that I discovered this after we did this. You may not even know this.
Go on.
That car we had was the first right-hand drive 3.8 E34.
Yeah, and actually we had a chap along who brought the E28 who knows about these things. And he pointed out that the chassis number in the windscreen was 0001.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah, but they did do a 6-speed one out at the end, and they did the Nürburgring edition.
Oh, did they? I didn't know about that.
Which had different suspension settings.
Okay.
I should know exactly what they were and how they work, but I don't.
Okay, but it was a 3.8.
So
wherever possible, where the cars were available,
Yeah.
we had the ultimate versions of them. So the bigger engine E34.
Yeah.
We had the 30 Yara edition F10, which was clearly to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the M5. That's the F10 model.
Was the E60 not on a 25 year as well?
Yeah, but I don't know what that meant.
No.
I don't think it meant anything
much.
beyond a plaque on the dorsal.
With the F10, the 30 year was a big upgrade, wasn't it?
Big upgrade, a lot more power, 50 odd more horsepower than
Yeah.
the standard car, and a chassis upgrade.
Yeah.
The competition pack that was available on the standard car.
Same power actually as the standard F90 went on to have.
Yeah.
592 horsepower.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then the F90, we had the CS model.
Yes.
Which was the sort of really trick one. More power, massively uprated chassis, less weight. So I suppose we've, wherever we could, we've given each model the best opportunity to put its best foot forward, I suppose.
And we didn't.
And it was
with
interesting.
And we didn't with the E28 because there was only ever one E28, wasn't there? So the E28 is the E28. Yeah. Although that has an engine which is almost, I think it didn't have hydraulic tappets, but I think that's basically the only difference between that and an M1 engine.
Oh, really? That's all it is?
Yeah, a bit more powerful, 286 horsepower rather than 277 in the M1. So more powerful, but essentially the engine from the mid-engine supercar, which is very cool.
So we had these 6 cars together.
Yeah.
And clearly we're not going to give everything away here because the stories will be on the Intercooler in a couple of weeks. Starting the 8th of July. It's that week.
Yeah.
And then the videos will be on YouTube a little while after that. So we're not going to give the game away, but we can talk a little bit about the cars and the ones that surprised us and the ones that we were driving for the first time. Because for me, I hadn't driven either of the E28 or the 34 before.
Yeah.
So that was really enjoyable.
And there were some, even for me, the E28 predates me in this business, but I had driven them, and all the others, sadly, maybe not, but I drove when they were brand new cars. But even for me, there were some big surprises.
So I think the F10 was the one that really surprised you, wasn't it? The first of the turbo ones.
Yeah, because I can remember looking at the list and thinking, well, I know what's coming last. And I'm not going to say where it came or anything else, but I don't know whether it's because I've got older or whether because that was the 30-year car with the upgrades on it, but it was so much better. than I thought it was going to be.
I think the upgrades make a huge difference because I've driven a standard car as well.
Yeah.
And it is a very wallowy boat, surprisingly so. And so it depends what you want, doesn't it? If you want a driver's car, which I think an M5 should be, albeit with some element of usability and comfort, it shouldn't be a stripped out thing, of course. So if you do want a more driver-centric car, the upgrades to the 30R model make a huge difference.
Yeah.
But I think you did a bit of research on standard
my
F10s,
goodness.
didn't you?
Yeah. You can pick up an F10 for 16 grand.
That's unbelievable.
I mean,
and that'll be comfy. It'll be quick. It'll handle well enough. It's
be
got a
really,
good cabin.
really quick.
Really quick.
Really, really properly quick. Yeah.
16 grand.
16 grand. Yeah.
We're not saying you should necessarily, but goodness me, that is a lot of car.
Yeah, and proper DCT gearbox.
Yeah.
Unlike the F90.
Only one.
The only one. Yeah, we've got pretty much every kind of, you got 5-speed manual, 6-speed manual, 7-speed robotized manual, DCT, and slusher.
Yeah, the whole lot.
Got the lot.
Rear drive, 4-wheel drive.
Yeah.
So the two early cars, the 28 and the 34, hadn't driven before. And the 28, lovely thing, really has that classic car feel because it is essentially 40 years old now, that thing.
Yeah, but also given that it was from the facelisted version of the original 5 Series.
Oh yeah, much older than that.
It's much. I mean, it's 70s technology,
and it does feel it to me.
Yeah,
I mean, the
absolutely.
engine was so sweet.
Yeah,
and it really does. It's a twin cam thing, isn't it? So it spins out beautifully.
Yeah,
lovely motor. And actually, I really enjoy that sort of more classic-y 70s, 80s driving experience because it's so different to what we're used to.
And also, the
what
car,
I'm used to.
Yeah, and the car, even compared to the E34, in fact, their power-to-rate ratios are almost, despite the fact the E34 had a lot more power, 340 horsepower, I think.
Yeah.
The E28 is so much lighter.
Yeah.
Their power-to-weight ratios are almost in the same. In fact, the E28s might be slightly better, even with the 3.8 in the E34. And also, there's that narrowness, isn't there? It feels like a long, narrow car, which actually, when you're sort of threading things through, narrow lanes or B roads, that sort of thing, is a real benefit.
It does make a big difference.
Yeah.
The 34 I was surprised by because the one that turned up, it's BMW UK's car, no radio,
no air conditioning button, which didn't have air conditioning.
I don't know if that's because it just wasn't working or...
I don't know. I mean, it'd be really cruel to give you the magic snowflake and then not let you use it. And
it was a hot day, wasn't it? It was quite sweaty in that thing.
Yeah.
But that is a very sporting car. And then you get to the 39 and you've got, these were an option, but you've got double glazed windows.
Yeah.
You've got a big armrest and big comfy leather chairs.
Big change of direction.
Lots of equipment
between the 34 and the 39.
Really big.
Yeah. And it still had a fairly high revving engine, but there's that straight six, that motorsport, that race derived straight six engine that you get in the 28 and the 34, and particularly in the 34, which I thought it was so smooth and so great to listen to. Yeah, I mean, I just adored that E34. I thought it was a wonderful, wonderful thing. And then you got in the E39, which was, it was wonderful for a different set of reasons, though, wasn't it? It was as a daily driver, you take the 39.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah,
I think that it's a very, very broadly capable car. The 39. I really like it, and I like the engine.
So do I.
But it's clearly stepping back from trying to be a pure driver's car.
Yeah.
It is a very different sort of machine. And then the modern ones. I've driven an M6 before, but not an M5 of that era.
So what was the mindset that got them from the 39 to the 60? So V8 quite, so as we were saying, daily drivery, quite sort of soft, user friendly car, and then you get into this nutcase thing with this very, what's the word? Characterful, if I'm being kind. Challenging, if I'm not. Robotized manual gearbox. And this monster V10 5-litre engine spinning to, what did it go to?
Beyond 8 250, I think.
Yeah. What were they trying to do with that? And does it work?
I think they were trying to draw the motorsport connection.
Yeah.
Because they were in F1 at the time.
Yeah.
With V10 era, so very high revving engines there, paddle shift gearboxes there. I think they were just trying to bring some element of that to the road in the M5 and the M3 that of the same era actually. So perhaps that's what they were trying to do there. And it's you're sort of in two minds. Actually, I don't think you are in two minds about the engine.
Well, yeah, but I'm not sure how much we talk about it on here. I mean, it is to me that car is the outlier. It's the least like an M5 or what I imagine an M5 should be of them all. It feels like the one where maybe they travelled a bit too far in a certain direction and thought, oh, okay, fine, well, that, it doesn't quite work for me.
And then the step from that one to the one that followed, the F10, the standard F10, it's actually a totally different car.
Totally.
It's just, they wound everything back.
Yeah, the F10 is the ultimate. I mean, the F10 is, I guess, much more the spiritual successor to the E39.
Yeah.
But actually goes much further, you might argue too far, in the sort of soft-bottomed, prioritising luxury and comfort over driving dynamics and entertainment. So, the question we faced, and we'll talk about the F90 in a minute, was just what do we want an M5 to be? And where do you draw that line? And which of these cars strikes that compromise best between something you just want to get in and it works and it doesn't matter whether it's raining or dark or Monday morning or whatever you're doing, and something which does justice to that badge on the back, and that under the right circumstances, despite the fact it's a four-door saloon, will still provide you with an absolutely searing driving experience.
That's right, and you really have to think about that before you approach these cars, and certainly before you try to pick a winner.
Yeah.
Because and I think we both agreed that, okay, they're not M2s, they're not M3s. We still want an M5 to be a driver's car.
Has to be.
I think
because otherwise call it an M550i or an M535i or whatever, because then we understand. That's what those cars are. Those are cars which are, luxury executive expresses, for want of a less excruciating cliche, which are also quite quick. That's not an M5.
No,
an M5 is a driver's car.
It should be
in a four-door format.
So we set out to find the car that lives up to that kind of billing. The F90 is a fascinating thing. So that's the one with the four-wheel drive system that you can switch to rear drive.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if you would ever do that. Would you really?
Gimmick.
You do it once or twice maybe just to show off or see what it does, but I just can't imagine owners actually do that.
You'd only do it on a track, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
You've got to have it in track mode before he'll even let you do it.
Yeah.
And who's going to track day there? Well, actually, I did, but it wasn't mine. But I've track dayed that actually. But anyway, yes, but actually, that car, it's like BMW realised with the F10 that they'd gone too far in the other direction. If they went too far one way with the E60, they went too far the other way with the F10. And so I think that the F90 is BMW trying to do a modern E34 or E39. It's a car which has that dynamic edge, that sporting edge, a really, really responsive, quite, I was about to say hardcore, but that would suggest sort of uncomfortable and impractical. It's not that. But it's a car that is at least trying to be a driver's car first and a four-door family saloon second.
Certainly the CS.
Yeah,
which is what we had.
And that's what we had, so that's all we can talk about, really.
Yeah. You only learn how these cars evolve from one to the other, how the focus has shifted from comfort to sport to comfort sport by getting them all back to back and driving them one after the other. It's the only way to do it.
So which way are they going to go with the G90?
Well, that's going to be fascinating, isn't it? It's going to be really interesting to see.
But you're absolutely right. To have those six cars on the same road, on the same day, in the same conditions, and just having them there, you could jump. And we did, didn't we? We went all day. We out of one, and it's only then that their true characters and their characters relative to each other become so apparent. Because even if you've driven them all, as I had, apart from, I'd even driven the E28, if you drive them in isolation, sometimes years apart, you think but it's only when you go and do that you actually suddenly the thoughts crystallize, and sometimes they change. I thought it was really fascinating. So what we did was, certainly in terms of the written story, which will be my department, and the videos will be Dan's, is we had two rounds, didn't we? We had the E28, the E34, and the E39 representing the sort of classic manual M5s, and then we had the E60 and the F10 and the F90 as the moderns, and then we picked a winner from each who went head to head against each other. So it's 3 stories and 2 videos. And it's, as you say, it's coming up on the week starting July the 8th.
July the 8th. Yeah. So
M5 week.
M5 week on the Intercooler. If you want to know, stay tuned to the Intercooler, the-intercooler.com. Find us on social media. If you love M5s, maybe now is finally the time to start your 30-day free trial to the Intercooler. We'll leave it there. Thank you ever so much for watching. I will just remind you all to subscribe. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel. If you're listening on a podcast app, just follow the show or subscribe to the show. It means you don't miss an episode. It also really helps us, so we do ask you to do that. And thank you ever so much, and we will be back next week.
Bye.